Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar. No excuses. It's time to power your processes. I'm Teresa Resick, Vice President of Market Intelligence here at AIIM, and AIIM is your host and producer of today's webinar. And joining us today, we have Kofax, and Kofax is the underwriter, and we thank them very much for their support and for their underwriting of our event. And certainly thank you for taking the time to join us today. Just as we get started here, just want to offer a few pointers for participating in today's webinar. Look to the chat feature and open it up right now. Say hello, let us know where you're listening from. But also in that chat feature, throughout the event, we're going to drop a couple of links for you. One is for resources, and that's some really cool and interesting reading and learning that you can do after the event. So with that URL, just open that up, and then afterwards you can go back in and check the really cool things that we have outlined in there. You can also ask questions of our speakers as we go through. You can use either that chat feature or Q&A. I'm monitoring both of them. So just ask your questions as you think of them, and we'll do our best to get to as many of them as we can towards the end of our time today. Would also appreciate it towards the end of the event if you would take our feedback survey. And again, look in the chat feature. That's where we're going to post a link for it there. I always value your feedback and certainly read every single comment and response that you put into this survey. So I would appreciate it if you would just take a few moments and let us know how we're doing today. And this webinar is being recorded, and it will be posted to AIIM.org's the Learning Center page in just a few days. So right now I want to introduce our host and MC that we have with us today. And as probably well familiar with Kevin Crane, and Kevin is AIIM's content strategist, and he authors books and infographics on a wide variety of intelligent information management and digital transformation topics. He is the producer and host of AIIM On Air podcast, and that podcast was recently listed on Forrester's 100 Best Channel Podcasts of 2021. And so I'm going to turn things over to Kevin to begin our talk today. Hi, Kevin.
Hi, Teresa. Thank you. Thank you so much. And hi, everybody. Welcome again to another really great AIIM webinar, this time with our friends from Kofax. Here talking about powering up our processes. And you know, at AIIM, we talk frequently about process automation and digital transformation. And while much of the discussion can center around the technologies, and we can sometimes fall into jargon and buzzwords, at the end of the day, it's all about making how we do business better, faster, more efficient, better service, more compliant, those kinds of things. And these days, how we do that is by automating repetitive processes, getting rid of paper-bound workflow, and establishing really new ways of working that make a difference. And the time has come to use these tools to make a difference, to power up our processes. Because while many organizations often give lip service to the idea of digital transformation and process automation, many AIIM members tell us that they still struggle to translate the ideas and the possibilities into practical projects that get traction. Well, one way to do that, one way to get that traction and make a real difference right away is to focus our efforts on common core business processes like accounts payable. Think about it. No matter what industry you're in or what the nature of your organization is, it's pretty likely that you have an accounts payable function, a ubiquitous but often overlooked function that everyone has, but one that's traditionally been really paper intensive, one that requires often a great deal of human intervention, often repetitive, often plagued by manual workflow, and a lack of automation. So AIIM members looking to make a real difference with digital transformation can start with AP. How automated is your AP function? Is it truly world-class, or are you still rooted in essentially last century technologies and practice? And is your AP function one of only many that may be behind the times a little bit? Well, that's what we'll be exploring today in this webinar. We'll use accounts payable process automation as one example of the many ways that organizations can power up their processes. We'll learn how to streamline and accelerate high-touch transactional processes, create a more seamless customer experience, perhaps, and ways to reduce time and resources spent on processes that can really yield a lot of benefits and savings. Ultimately, our success requires the right capabilities and the right technologies for sure, but also a meaningful plan for process improvement. So we'll explore that, join us as we explore that, and using AP as a template for process automation and digital transformation with our guest today, David Santongo. David is a product strategist at Kofax, and he's an expert at intelligent automation. And David's also a skydiver. So David, if you don't mind the pun, let's jump right into it. David, from your perspective, what are the most important challenges today when it comes to AP automation that we need to consider? And can you speak broadly to the AP automation market and the tools available to help us overcome those challenges?
No, absolutely happy to be here. Just first and foremost, I mean, this is certainly an area focused on for quite a while. Prior to being a product strategist at Kofax, I was actually implementing solutions like this at Deloitte. So I have a financial background through the CPA track. But yes, at Kofax, it's pretty exciting here, right? In my role, I get to work with sales teams across the business, across the world, meeting the needs of customers. And as we look at their challenges, they grow and evolve with the size of the organization. And so at the SMB level, right? So we're supporting SMB customers, we're supporting mid-market enterprise. At the SMB level, we're seeing challenges primarily around just bringing some efficiency to how they capture and extract data from invoices. I mean, just that very simple problem. How do we automate this? How do we pay our suppliers more efficiently? And these invoices at the SMB level typically are not as complex. And purchase order usage is also lower as well. So they're not necessarily having many challenges around doing traditional things like matching. And so we focus on how we can help them do better in that area. Now, among our mid-market customers and organizations at that level, between 100 and 900 employees, we really see challenges extending into like how they are coding those invoices. So they bring invoices in from their suppliers. How do you code them and assign them to the right expense accounts? Since they're also beginning to issue purchase orders more regularly, they certainly are interested in alleviating and bringing some efficiency to how they do things like standard two-way matches, three-way matches, right? The invoice, the purchase order, the goods receipt report. And they're also growing into a greater set of legal and compliance requirements as well. So in our conversations with them, they're certainly interested in how can an automation capability not only bring efficiency to my invoicing process, but keep me in compliance with the quickly evolving and changing regulatory landscape, right, around the world, which can be difficult to keep up with manually. Something we also see at this tier that grows in more prevalence is the need for the existence, of like an ERP system, a financial management system that they're using to manage broader processes that go beyond AP. And so as they're looking at a solution that manages this end-to-end process for invoicing, they want to make sure that that integrates with their ERP, because that's where they're maintaining a lot of their vendor master data records. And so in bringing in a solution, shortening that time to value means, does a connector exist? Does it integrate with what I already have? And then ultimately getting to the enterprise level, we see a lot of the needs we've talked about already at the SMB and at the mid-market level, just at varying levels of complexity. They're interested in doing this across regions and geos in multiple languages. There's multiple currencies. So certainly a solution needs to be able to handle a lot of that complexity. And then they have multiple ERPs. Kevin actually did a panel like this with a customer earlier this year who had 20 different ERPs in his organization. And so he was talking about how he brought in a solution to manage that. And typically this happens at the enterprise level when you've acquired a couple of companies and you haven't retired your existing systems, but they still have data in there that's critical to the AP process. And so having that ability or managing that challenge of bringing that together around one process is very, very important to customers in this tier. And then you start getting into like more complex matching as well. So 4, 5, 6-way matching. These organizations at the enterprise level have, and I bet many in the audience here are feeling this pain, thousands of suppliers. And so you may have to check several different things just to make sure you're paying the right supplier, and having an individual do that every time is just, I mean, it's unreasonable in this day and age. So a solution that can handle that certainly is important. And then ultimately, you have the issue of how do you manage interactions with suppliers, which is actually a very hot topic that comes up in nearly every conversation I have. So onboarding them, collecting things like just standard background documentation that you need to facilitate to sign up a supplier, and also doing background checks, updating banking records. When you have thousands of suppliers, like, you cannot have people just sitting here manually filling these inquiries. So those are some of the challenges that we're seeing, and areas where people are most interested in how automation can help, how we can help them to certainly get past these transactional elements of the process so that they can be more strategic and ultimately more competitive and responsive to their suppliers.
Well, I would be interested, David, in any comments or questions from our audience about this, folks that may be involved with AP. Does this resonate with you? I guess as you're talking, David, I'm thinking of all the processes that I could pick to work on, to automate, to bring improvements to, AP. I understand it's common, but does it rise to the top of the list of things that I would pay attention to? And I get the idea of building efficiencies. There are some legal issues there. I'm wondering where the benefits lie, maybe related to, but beyond AP. What are the most important benefits, not just from an efficiency and savings point of view, but also from an organizational performance point of view? Are there ways to link this effort to ways that can give me a competitive advantage by being more agile and more automated in AP? Tell me a little bit more beyond AP.
Yep, no, I love this question and where you're going with it, because there certainly are those concrete benefits around efficiency. There's data to show that you can see a 5-fold decrease in invoice processing costs, and 2.5-fold decrease or 2.5-fold increase in your ability to achieve touchless processing. You reduce errors and such. So like some of the more quantitative elements you need to establish a business case. This is like a proven solution. This is something that many other organizations have been successful in, and you can leverage that to garner the buy-in that's required in order to make that investment. We did a study with SSON last year that showed that organizations who have gotten ahead of this are processing invoices in less than 2 minutes, whereas people who are taking the manual approach, it's above 20 minutes an invoice, which, I mean, as you scale that to thousands per year, it becomes a very difficult problem. But to answer your broader question, there is a larger set of benefits, and I think they correlate to the changing view of AP within the organization. I'm personally seeing accounts payable teams starting to get involved in much more than just standard invoice processing activities. They're taking on higher value roles in the organization, like getting involved in fraud prevention activities. They're advising in broader procure-to-pay transformation initiatives and spend management and rationalization. And so all of this sort of activity depends on data. So the account payable function's ability to harness and generate data and have the space and time to think about these things. And so as automation is brought in, it certainly facilitates a move to this world where accounts payable sitting at the table and advising on some of these higher level initiatives that are very, very critical to the livelihood of an organization and its competitive ability moving forward. So streamlining the transactional invoice processing to many of our customers is really just phase one. achieving operational efficiency to focus on other initiatives. And it also correlates with some data that we're seeing where executives are certainly stating that data and intelligence are very important and critical pieces of accounts payable. So collaboration with functions like treasury, functions like procurement certainly can be enhanced by, at the procurement level, leveraging accounts payable data to support supplier rationalization initiatives, to analyze spending patterns across suppliers that may warrant more attention and things of that nature. And then from a treasury standpoint, with more real-time data, you can begin to get into better tailored cash forecasts as well. And so all that begins with getting ahead of that transactional processing and then generating data that can be used to drive more strategic decision-making that's rooted in accounts payable data.
All right, well then, how do I do it? Now you talk about 5 critical capabilities of a good AP automation solution. Briefly, what are those capabilities and why are they so important and how can we do it too?
Yep. Yeah, we actually have a visual around this that I love to use in telling this story. This is something that's been a culmination of many of the discussions that we've had with customers, understanding their needs. I mean, I sit down and spend a fair amount of my time talking to analysts as well who are studying this space. But these 5 pillars you're seeing on the slide really shape our roadmap of AP automation solutions. So we have a portfolio of products that span these capabilities, and our R&D teams are building in new features or prioritizing features that help customers do this better, and attack these issues better. So moving from left to right, starting with AP document intelligence, this bucket captures everything along the lines of understanding an invoice, no matter its language, no matter its format. Companies are doing business with suppliers all over the world. And so automating the degree to which, irrespective of all those different layouts, they can extract the critical pieces of data effectively and with low levels of exceptions, captures what we're trying to do there from an AP document intelligence standpoint. And the better we're able to get at this, the faster our customers are able to get to value, right? Without having to navigate the period of a lot of exceptions in the process and things not being correct the first time. So across our portfolio set, I believe we support over 40 different languages. Also supporting more and more e-invoicing invoice formats as well. So certainly within Eastern and also Western Europe, we're seeing regulations that are coming in mandating a shift to sending and receiving electronic invoicing. And some of those formats we're increasingly taking into our portfolio, along with things like QR invoices as well. Moving into that second bucket, e-invoicing and portal. So having the portal functionality I was talking about earlier, where suppliers can interact with the organization, ask their questions, get responses, handling some of those inquiries that studies have shown can take up to 25% of time within the AP staff, or the AP function staff can be spending almost 25% of their time responding to inquiries manually. So having a portal that streamlines that certainly is important to our customers, and as an extension, pretty important to us as well. So the portal functionality is captured there. And then getting into dynamic workflow, this addresses the functionality around things like coding invoices to the right expense codes, dealing with the 2, 3, 4 matches, automating that part of the process that is manual, along with the approval. So sometimes invoices may need to be routed to a certain special individual for their approval. Exceptions may come up, ad hoc elements may arise in the process. And so having a robust set of workflow functionality to handle that complexity certainly becomes important, especially for our mid-market and enterprise customers. ERP integration is critical because, one, it accelerates time to value, especially for our multi-ERP customers. I mean, if you have, like my early example, 17 ERPs within your business, certainly you will want a solution that integrates with a fair amount of them, which minimizes the time that you have to spend getting SMEs to build connections to these systems and testing and so forth. So we're very focused on building ERP connectors to some of the big logos and big brands out there. We have connectors to ERPs from Microsoft, from Oracle. You know, we have efforts to integrate with Coupa, you know, Visma, SAP. There's several SAP ERPs that we support integration to right outside the box. And adding to that population based on customer feedback is an area of focus. And then automation beyond AP. This is something that we see a lot of interest in at the enterprise level. So AP automation is an area where they are interested in getting started. And that's because, as I said earlier, I mean, this is something a lot of organizations have seen success doing. So building momentum around a pretty stable use case is of interest to them. But it's just one of many other processes that they're looking to automate in their business, Kevin. And it goes back to the earlier points you're making around other areas to achieve workflow automation. So you can get into like customer onboarding, just general customer management. There are many other processes that certainly can be attacked. And so them partnering with a vendor that supports them with AP, but can also help them extend into these others under a similar product team and licensing model is something that they find very interesting. One thing that's also missing here that comes up in every single conversation we also are focused on is analytics. So a lot of data is getting touched and processed in this end-to-end flow. And so providing analytics that just speak to what's happening at all points in the process is interesting, and also ties into the data theme I was talking about earlier.
Right.
That's what Accounts Payable ultimately ends up leveraging to take a more strategic role within the organization. And so those analytics are very important to that future state.
We are speaking with David Santongo. He is a product strategist at Kofax and an expert in intelligent automation. We're talking about AP automation. And we welcome your questions for David here during the session today. Please feel free to type your questions or comments into the Q&A or the questions section, and we'll be sure to get that included in our discussion during the Q&A portion of our session today. Now, David, do you have a case example of one organization or use case that you feel really best describes the success that's possible? What did they do? What were the results, and how can we do it too?
Yep. No, I always love this area of the conversation. Look, we have 25,000 customers around the world. About 4,000 are using our financial or AP automation solutions. It's pretty evenly spread across industries, but certain sectors like financial services, healthcare, and government certainly are where we have a pretty established footprint. But one customer in particular that comes to mind recently is a larger energy service provider that approached us within the last, I believe it was the last 12 to 15 months. You know, they have operations in 23 states and also in Canada, so pretty established presence. And they have a supplier base that's around the world. So they were dealing with a pretty complex scenario where they were getting invoices in different formats and languages and so forth across this supplier base. The process was actually so complex in the current state that it was taking them about 34 days to process an invoice. It was just unbelievable. So from receiving it in their business to processing it for payment, it was taking about a month. and about 85 to 95% of their invoices were being paid late. And there was also rework that was having to take place, right? Because of just the errors that arise in the manual whenever you do these things manually. So we worked with them for a period of a couple months to automate their invoicing process with our solutions. So we came in and we helped them implement solutions that automate capture, so bringing in invoices across channels. To some of the invoices are coming in from mobile devices, some are coming in via email, they have XML invoices, and they have some traditional that they're getting via fax. But like all these different channels have been consolidated into one solution that takes them all in. And we're supporting them with the coding of those. And then when exceptions arise, they're taking advantage of our workflow capabilities to handle the approval process and our ERP connections as well. So they brought all of that in, and in today's state, they've centralized how all this is happening. So they have a team within Atlanta that receives all invoices, and they're immediately processed with automation. And so like the results have been pretty astounding. I mean, within 6 months of implementation, the cycle time for invoices has dropped from 32 days to a little shy of 7. And I mean, this is still a lot of complexity, but they're doing far better than what they previously were able to do. And then they've also, one of their goals up front was just to improve visibility into the process, get more understanding about who their most used suppliers were, spending patterns. They've been able to leverage our analytics to get to a place such that management's able to see this more and just begin to support supplier rationalization and looking into opportunities to save and just spend a little bit better and manage those supply relationships. And so this story is not unique to this energy service provider. I mean, there's similar stories with retail chains. You know, there's an athleisure brand that we worked with not too long ago to achieve similar outcomes with our solutions. I mean, we have not-for-profit customers. As I said earlier, government has been a big space for us in the past, automobile manufacturers. So it's certainly exciting to see these outcomes consistently repeat themselves with our solution set. And really, I think it's easier than ever to get started, especially with the advent of SaaS-based solutions as well too, that remove some of the risk around infrastructure and bringing in complex IT teams to install things. I think bringing in a solution that you can immediately just get started with and run with mitigates a lot of the risk that can be associated with a traditional technology deployment.
Yeah, that's right, David. I think I started this session sort of posing the question, you know, where can we move the needle right away? And one place to start would be a process like AP that everyone has. And so you just described a large organization that took their cycle time paying invoices from over a month to like a week, 7 days. That's significant. And then they're able to then not only do that in a sort of a efficiency, on the efficiency side of the coin, but then use that data to more fully understand their spending patterns. And I can see a number of strategic advantages with that, all on the heels of automating something that everyone has, that we likely could find some good support and buy-in for making a better process. And that is accounts payable. That sort of sets the stage to transformation in other areas of any organization. And as we look to 2022 and beyond, what other areas should we all consider in using these technologies and these approaches that can, as I like to say, really move the needle with digital transformation and process automation in 2022 and beyond?
Yeah, I think the biggest opportunity really is shifting from, and this is any function within an organization, if you can move beyond being a transactional processor to a data provider, like that is the big ticket. That is where if everybody in the organization is data centric and data focused, I mean, the decisions that you make are just a lot more, you do things with more conviction, and you achieve results that can be more substantial. So like, I think for the AP function in general, that will be the ultimate goal. Now, it certainly does require a phased approach. And so moving as quickly as possible towards getting past that transactional phase to operational efficiency is where I think we'll see a lot of folks focused near term. Now, once, as we move beyond 2022 and onwards, I do think e-invoicing it plays a much larger role. We're moving towards a world where ultimately invoices are XML based and virtual in nature versus the traditional standard PDFs. And so having the right capabilities in place to receive those invoices, to understand them, to extract the right elements of them, right, to submit them for payment is very important. It's going to happen at varying, I think, paces by region. So for example, as we look at Western Europe, Brazil, Australia, I mean, these are very, very forward-leaning regulatory bodies there that are, I mean, in France, for example, I believe by 2020, end of 2022, next year, they're mandating that most invoicing be electronic in nature. So there's a race towards meeting some of the requirements there. In the Americas, the United States here, I think we'll eventually get there. But case in point, some of the more forward-looking innovators in this call certainly are going to be interested in like how they are equipped to do business in a scenario where e-invoicing is mandated. Supplier collaboration, I think, is going to be something that becomes, or that continues to grow in importance. Again, especially at the large organization level, when you have thousands of suppliers, how do you efficiently onboard them? How do you communicate with them better? I mean, this certainly has real implications. Again, other areas of the world, you can be blacklisted and be put in certain lists if you're not paying your suppliers in time, if your relationships are strained. It certainly has impacts on your ability to get early payment discounts and so forth. So I think a focus on having those portals and abilities to interact with suppliers more efficiently will remain very important. And artificial intelligence in the space, I think, will grow in importance as well. So certain use cases, for example, are leveraging artificial intelligence to support dynamic discounting. And again, this goes towards helping people achieve more efficient pricing for their goods. But they're also leveraging AI to spot fraud within the invoice process and get ahead of things like invoice duplication, suggesting. So for example, when staff are having to code certain invoices, artificial intelligence can aid in expense accounts to code them to. So you'll start to see more of that to just make the process a bit easier to mitigate duplication and fraud and to support discounting. And then just more, I think more broadly, again, I got to keep going back to the data thing. All of this will be motivated by a desire to make information as quickly available to the right decision makers as possible, such that they can manage cash better, right, in the business. And that's ultimately what this is all about, cash being king.
All right, David, I want to get to our questions from our audience, but before we do, one last question. How does Kofax help us with all of this? Do you have any resources to share? How do we connect? What are our next steps?
Yes, so Kofax certainly can support in terms of our solutions that help organizations at all stages throughout this journey. So from invoice understanding all the way through submitting an invoice to payment, managing interactions with suppliers, like our portfolio, we have capabilities that can automate and bring efficiencies to these critical points throughout the AP process. And then we also we can support the varying deployment needs of organizations as well, right? So some of our solutions support on-premise deployment for organizations that have such a requirement, but we also have SaaS-based solutions also. As that becomes a much more common deployment model in the AP space, and just more broadly the automation space, SaaS is certainly becoming the way to go. And then we do have a follow-up slide with resources that people can take advantage of. We have a benchmark study that was just released in the last week or two, actually, and it begins to speak to some of the impact that we're seeing automation drive. So these are assets that people can use to garner early buy-in and help their management teams understand the opportunity. And then we also have a link, I believe, to a page where people who want to actually demo the software, see how it works, they can certainly use that page to initiate their interest, and we'll coordinate getting folks to follow up. I know today's discussion really is just that, a discussion. We haven't really gotten into showing product. So that's an outlet for those who want to see and learn more. And then ultimately, I'm active on LinkedIn as well. I have a Twitter account. So for those who want to engage in follow-on conversation, I'm always happy to do that. And I can personally help get you connected. But yeah, those were a couple of the things that that people can do if they're interested in learning more about Kofax and how we can support them along this process. And even more broadly beyond AP as well, getting into other workflows in their business that can be transformed with automation.
That is David Santonga with Kofax. Let's use our remaining time with David to take advantage of his expertise and perspective. Please feel free to bring up any questions or comments that you have in the Q&A section or the chat feature. We'd be happy to take those now. And indeed, David, we do have a question from Bill about pre-built connectors. Is there a complete list of the financial management systems for which there is a pre-built connector? What do you have to say about that?
Absolutely, we can provide that. So it gets into detail because there's several Oracle products that we connect to, several SAP products, Microsoft. So yes, we can update our slide deck here to reflect all of those available connectors, and then Bill, if you are interested in diving a little deeper into like how those connectors work, engagements can certainly be coordinated to provide that detail. But just to rattle off a couple anecdotally here, Microsoft Dynamics 365 F&O is a system we connect with. Just the Coupa spend management platform, SAP S/4HANA, ES Cloud, on-prem as well, Oracle Financials Cloud are a couple. But yes, we can get a more comprehensive list.
Very good. We have another question coming in from Mark. Mark is asking, can Kofax extend automation past accounts payable to include sending automated ordering to the same vendors?
So we certainly have, it's a nuanced question because we certainly have capabilities around processing of sales orders. We get into use cases like that. And then when it comes to SAP, there's certain processes we can automate around order to cash. But probably should just dive a little deeper into the use case and the need to better address how we're able to support along those lines.
Now, David, I know we have talked a lot about AP today, but you mentioned that, certainly there are other core processes that are a good target for automation. You folks work with many of those. Which ones also should make our short list, and what are the advantages and opportunities?
We're seeing a lot of interest and advantage around just transforming the onboarding process with automation. That looks different from vertical to vertical. Our public sector customers are finding ways to, for example, make more efficient the process of applying for a new license, more efficient with case management and dynamic workflow capabilities that facilitate inputs from the customer, bring a caseworker to the case, deliver outcome back. We're doing similar things in the healthcare space around patient registration and admission. We have capabilities that can address, and then in the banking and financial services sector, activities around know your customer can certainly benefit from bringing in automation to facilitate background checks. And when somebody's trying to open up a bank account, there's a lot of different systems and people that typically get touched along that journey. And so having a capability that orchestrates like all of that activity seamlessly is a value prop that resonates primarily, within that FSI sector. Moving beyond onboarding, we're certainly seeing use cases around providing electronic consent. So we have e-signature capabilities, which have actually grown in a lot of focus as we have shifted to a more remote working world. So being able to electronically sign documents and such is something our customers are leaning into. And more broadly, when you get into like repetitive and manual tasks, leveraging RPA and you probably had webinars on this in the past, but bringing in RPA capabilities to streamline and remove the manual nature that some of those, and the time suck that some of those activities have, building reports and reconciliations and such. We do a lot of it all the time. RPA can alleviate that and help people focus on more strategic initiatives.
David, you mentioned small mid-sized businesses early on. You also gave a great example of a very large enterprise operation. Are there advantages or disadvantages with either one? Are smaller businesses perhaps in a better position to adopt some of these techniques and become a bit more agile and adopt the change more easily? Or am I mistaken with that? Are larger organizations in a better position perhaps because they have the infrastructure and maybe the moxie to do it? Am I barking up the wrong tree? What are the advantages and disadvantages for both sides of organizations?
Yeah, I mean, I think they have different problem sets. They both live in different realities. So like a small business, certainly there's less levels in the chain of command. And so ultimately making a decision to do something it's much quicker from like, we want to do this to actually implementing. But their needs are not necessarily as complex as that of a large organization, which is why the decision-making process can sometimes take a while. I mean, what we're seeing, and so from a perspective of agility in the decision-making process, I think like higher band mid-market is where you may see decisions being made fairly quickly, and the organization has the resources and capacity to go big. But it really does depend from customer to customer. I think in general, though, people are seeing and understanding that this is something that they need to do. So it's not an issue of selling the organization on this, like, what is this? Does this work? There's not doubt about it. It's just timing up when to get it done and making sure that these organizations want to be sure they're partnering with the right provider who could meet their needs, especially the larger ones. I mean, when you're talking a multi-country, multi-currency rollout, like you cannot afford to not get it right the first time. So I think a longer decision-making process may be around just wanting to make sure that they are going and spending their money with the right provider before they commit.
That is David Santongo, product strategist at Kofax. You can find him and find out more at kofax.com. That's K-O-F-A-X, kofax.com. David, thank you so much for being our guest today. I am going to turn it back to Teresa to help us close out the event. Teresa?
Well, hi there. I've really been enjoying this conversation. And David, I'm going to come back to you one more time with the closing thought. So don't go away. But I just wanted to let everyone who is listening know that about one of the latest things that we're doing here at AIIM, and we're calling it AIIM Plus. And AIIM Plus offers information professionals a robust collection of educational content, and it enables you to foster professional and personal connections in a buzzing community. So we offer the freedom to experience all of AIIM's training for as long as you need it. Monthly and annual subscriptions are available. So if you go to the address that you see on the screen now, aim.org/aim-plus. You can learn all about the offerings that we have. There's 2 different tiers, but it's just a fabulous opportunity to connect with the AIM community and get everything AIM has in with our training offerings. And that's something that we're adding new training offerings every single month. So there's a reason to keep coming back. And so I'm really excited that we're offering this to the AIM community. We think it's a fantastic thing for you, and that you're going to enjoy the variety of new content that we're going to be placing in there each month. And and our webinar time is coming to a close, and just wanted to say that we have been recording the webinar. Come back and catch it at our learning center. Invite your colleagues to listen to it. This has been a really engaging conversation. Everything about accounts payable, but it's certainly so much more applicable to so many other processes in an organization and in every industry. Again, in chat, look for those resources, and also to appreciate if you would take our feedback survey. Certainly want to thank Kofax for their participation and their sponsorship. And as I said, I want to come back to both of the gentlemen who've been with us today for some closing thoughts or a key takeaway. So let me start first with David Santago, who is the product strategist at Kofax. Your concluding thoughts today.
Yeah, I mean, concluding thoughts, certainly, I think just get started. The barriers to entry and risk are considerably lower than they have been in the past. There's a lot of information out there, a lot of data out there to show that there's value that can be realized pretty quickly in attacking this area of the business, and then leverage that momentum to do more. AP is, I think, the low-hanging fruit, especially around operational efficiency, but doing more than shifts into, again, like redefining how AP is looked at within the business, and also beginning to attack broader and other use cases. And so if that means talking to somebody else in an organization about it or having a follow-up conversation, I think just taking some action in the near term would be my concluding thought around the information we've talked about today.
Thank you, David.
Yeah.
And Kevin Crane, you get to enjoy so many of these conversations with our members in our community and with subject matter experts like David. Your thoughts on what all we've discussed today?
Well, Teresa, I guess I'll kind of go back to what I said at the beginning, process automation, digital transformation, process improvement. It's really all about making how we do business better. And one way to make a real difference right away with digital transformation, some of the tools and automation techniques that we talk about frequently, is to focus our efforts on really these core business processes that everyone has. And accounts payable is one really great example. And we've done a great job at exploring some of the aspects on both the tactical side and the strategic side about automation as it is applied to accounts payable and even beyond. Ultimately, our success requires the right capabilities and the right technologies, but also a meaningful plan for process improvement. And that is what makes these sessions so valuable. So I appreciate David's comments today and everyone being with us to explore the ideas.
Most certainly, I appreciate David's expertise. Kevin, thank you for leading our conversation today. Everyone in our audience, I value your time. Thank you for sharing it with us, and we'll see you all with our next event. Have a great afternoon.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you.